Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is June 14th. On this day in 2015, police in Springfield, Missouri responded to a bizarre and disturbing Facebook post and soon uncovered the body of 48-year-old Claudine Dee Dee Blanchard. She had been stabbed to death in her bedroom. At first glance, it looked like a violent home invasion, but within hours, that assumption unraveled, revealing one of the most twisted and tragic stories of medical abuse, manipulation, and murder in recent memory. Today, we're going to talk about the story of Dee Dee Blanchard and the unbelievable truth about her daughter, Gypsy Rose. Let's get started. June 14th, 2015 was a quiet Sunday afternoon. Around 2:30 p.m., friends and neighbors of Dee Dee and Gypsy noticed something disturbing on Facebook. A post had gone up on their shared account written entirely in capital letters. It said, quote, "That bitch is dead," end quote. Then, just minutes later, there was a second, even more horrifying comment. Quote, "I effing slashed that fat pig and raped her sweet, innocent daughter. Her scream was so effing loud, LOL," end quote. Understandably horrified, friends rushed to the Blanchards' home in Springfield. It was a tidy little house that was built by Habitat for Humanity. Dee Dee and Gypsy were well known in the community, especially Gypsy, a girl with big eyes, a small frame, and a long list of medical issues. She was thought to be 14 or 15 years old, confined to a wheelchair, and battling everything from leukemia to muscular dystrophy. In reality, she was 23. When no one answered the door, a neighbor climbed in through a window. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. Nothing seemed out of place, though, until they reached Dee Dee's bedroom. There, face down on the bed, was Dee Dee Blanchard. She had been stabbed 17 times, but there was no sign of Gypsy. So panic immediately set in. Had she been kidnapped? Was she hurt? Or even worse? Police launched an immediate missing child alert, but the truth would emerge quickly, and it was stranger than anyone could have imagined. To outsiders, Dee Dee seemed like a devoted mother. She often described herself as her daughter's full-time caretaker. She spent her days selflessly tending to Gypsy's long list of illnesses: cancer, seizures, cognitive delays, and more. She claimed that Gypsy had the mental capacity of a second grader. They'd moved to Missouri after losing everything in Hurricane Katrina, or so Dee Dee said. In Springfield, the community embraced them. Charities pitched in, they were given a house, and donations poured in. Media outlets ran feel-good stories. Celebrities even met Gypsy through Make-A-Wish. But it was all a lie. Gypsy wasn't terminally ill. In fact, she didn't need a wheelchair, a feeding tube, or half the medication she was given. She was physically healthy, just deeply controlled and manipulated by her mother. Over the years, Dee Dee had convinced doctors to treat imaginary conditions, sometimes even convincing them to perform unnecessary procedures. When someone questioned her, she'd either claim medical records had been lost in the hurricane, or she'd just move on to a different doctor. Behind closed doors, Gypsy was isolated, infantilized, and psychologically abused. Dee Dee shaved her daughter's head to mimic the appearance of chemotherapy. She'd punish her if she spoke out and made her believe that she was too sick to ever live on her own. What Dee Dee suffered from is known as factitious disorder or Munchausen syndrome by proxy. It's a mental disorder where a caregiver fabricates or induces illness in another person to gain sympathy and control. At that point, Gypsy didn't even know what was real anymore, but eventually she began to look for a way out. In 2012, Gypsy secretly joined a Christian dating website. There, she met Nicholas Godejohn, a man from Wisconsin with a history of mental illness and developmental disorders. Their relationship moved fast and quickly took a dark turn. Through thousands of private messages, the pair developed a relationship built on fantasy, sexual role play, and a growing resentment toward Dee Dee. In June 2015, Gypsy confided in Nicholas. She wanted her mother dead. She couldn't leave on her own, she said, because Dee Dee would never allow it. So, late on the night of June 10th, Nicholas boarded a Greyhound bus and traveled over 600 miles to Missouri. Gypsy let him into the house, and then she hid in the bathroom while he crept into Dee Dee's bedroom with a knife. There, he stabbed her 17 times. The next day, the pair returned to Wisconsin, bringing the murder weapon with them. Then, bizarrely, they posted those shocking messages to Dee Dee's Facebook page, either as a taunt, a confession, or some sort of twisted victory. Within 2 days, police traced the IP address. Gypsy and Nicholas were both arrested, and this shocking story broke wide open. When news of Dee Dee's murder first broke, people were horrified. But as the details emerged, public opinion began to shift. This wasn't the case of a rebellious teenager. This was a girl who had spent her entire life being told that she was dying, only to learn that she'd been lied to, manipulated, and denied a childhood. In July 2016, Gypsy pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison with eligibility for parole after serving 85% of her sentence. Nicholas Godejohn stood trial separately. His defense team argued he had diminished mental capacity and was manipulated by Gypsy. But prosecutors painted a different picture, one of a man who carried out a brutal, premeditated killing. In 2018, he was convicted of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison. Gypsy's story sparked a wave of media attention. Documentaries like Mommy Dead and Dearest and shows like Hulu's The Act captivated audiences. True crime enthusiasts, medical professionals, and advocates all weighed in about what the case revealed about abuse, mental health, and the limits of the medical system. On December 28th, 2023, Gypsy Rose Blanchard walked out of prison a free woman. Since then, she's spoken publicly about her past. She acknowledges both her role in the crime and the years of trauma that led up to it. She's said that she hopes to live a quiet life, one where she can finally make her own decisions and hopefully heal. As for Dee Dee, her story remains deeply complicated. Was she a monster or a woman suffering from her own mental illness? Or both? What's clear is that 2 lives were destroyed before the knife was ever drawn. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found Dee Dee's story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day, True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!